Welcome, everyone, to Beers with Jesus, Todd's World. Carrie's with me today, as always, per usual.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Huge.
Carrie's got her Corona. I got my Coors.
Yeah.
We are loaded up with Beers for Jesus today. Beers with Jesus, not for
Yeah.
Jesus.
Beers for Jesus. That's a whole different kind of show. I don't know.
How you doing, Carrie? It's cold down there in Florida, I guess, in Jacksonville, Florida.
Yeah, it's cold. It's crazy cold. And I know everyone is like, oh, it's not really. No, it felt like 9 degrees last night. And we've got stuff freezing, bursting,
Do you
spraying.
have snow or you don't have snow?
So there were supposed flurries at like 6 p.m.
Oh, okay.
We went out and looked. We didn't see any. I have a friend who saw some, like, not far from here, and my boss at the beach said they saw some outside. That just means snow blowing in the air.
Imagine it being cool to see snow. I
I know,
just
it's
see
kind of
snow
I
all
mean,
the time.
I know. If if it's this cold, we're like, it would actually be cool if it snowed, you know?
No, I'm with you.
It'd be a little bit of fun novelty, I guess.
They're getting hammered in the Carolinas this weekend.
Are they?
Yeah, like, they got 18 inches of snow in Charlotte, I think.
Ooh.
Just getting pounded.
I mean, you guys have, like, a good almost that, right?
Oh, yeah, we got at least
You have
probably that.
over a
I
foot,
mean I
right?
mean, as it goes on, as it sits there a week or 2, it goes down a
Yeah.
little. Even if it's cold out, it still goes down a little.
Mhm.
So,
Just
um
Skittles, but
but yeah, you've still got huge snowbanks everywhere and
wild.
everything, you know? It's just life, that's how it goes here.
Just life.
Northern Michigan. Not
Well,
northern, I guess we're in western, I don't feel like I'm quite northern.
yeah, you're Western Michigan.
Yeah,
You're in the north of the Midwest. Go
yeah,
listen to news
we've got the
yesterday.
lower lakes and the northern woods, and we're, like, right at the I think my county is technically Lower Lakes, but right up the next county above us is
Really?
woods, and that does make sense because it does start to go to woods, and you kinda
Okay,
transitions away from rural, you know, farming and everything else, so,
cool.
yeah. So how you been, Carrie? Good? News was good yesterday. Guys, if you haven't listened, tune into news yesterday. Great show.
Yeah,
Um, we've been going a little long on news lately.
it's just been you know what,
Just
though? It's not because we're, like, stressed or ranting, it's just
no.
some cool topics, and Todd's
I s
been introducing some outside of political
Yeah, I like to go a little
talk, and it's
further afield.
I love it. I mean, it's fun
We
to talk
talked
about
about
different
breast milk fetishes
Oh my
yesterday.
gosh.
No, it was crazy though what we learned about breastfeeding,
Yeah,
and everything that's going on between mom and baby and the whole thing is crazy.
yeah,
It's
it's
amazing how
really
much is going on.
yeah, there's way more going on than just nutrition.
Oh yeah, it's
Yeah, it's
shocking.
cool. Very cool.
So anyway, tune into news, guys, if you haven't. Toddsworld.net is where the merch is. Books and audiobooks soon to be. I'm working on it. I'm trying to get everything set so it launches all at once. I could launch them individually, but I'm trying to get everything ready to go at once so that we can
It's
have
cool.
kind of a big party.
Nice. Will we have
A
a special
launch.
I like it.
So today
Mhm,
last week we had a special show. If you haven't listened to last week's, you should go listen to it. We had
mhm.
Trevor on. Cousin Trevor joined us, and we talked about Life West Church, which actually is my church that I go to, and some disagreements that we found ourselves in. Nothing that's the end of the world. It wasn't like we were bashing anybody or anything else. Just
Right.
wanted to have some maybe a little bit more confrontational discussions than it seems like churches are real comfortable with having lately. You think that's fair?
That's fair, and I think ultimately we just covered the topic of church, interactions on social media in general, like
Yeah.
now in this age, and what kind of responsibilities.
How does iron sharpening iron work?
Yeah.
You know? Seems like something of a violent or quasi-violent, endeavor. Like, there's a lot going. You know what I mean? Like, you got things banging and hitting and, like
Oh, you mean, yeah, literally
yeah,
iron
literally.
sharpening iron? Mhm.
Yeah, like, there's just something to that. So, I enjoyed it. I thought it was a great show. If people haven't listened, they should go back and listen. Well, that would be true all the time, but
But it was a little different, so go
yeah, it was
Tigers.
good. So this week we're back in Acts, and we're in Acts 21,
Mhm.
following Paul around, and I think we're going to get through the whole chapter today, which is going to be amazing for us. Look at us
Okay.
go. You want me to start? I think that we'll probably switch up reading. Like I'll
Okay.
probably read part, and then maybe I'll have you
Yeah.
read the next part, and we'll just
Sounds
kind of
great.
make our way through it. Sound good?
Sounds great.
We use the message just because the message is the best. That's all. So Carrie is a cradle Catholic, as she likes to call herself, and I'm just a cradle Christian. I'm just kidding. Okay, let's start with Acts 21. I'll start reading, Carrie, then you can read the next section.
Sounds good.
Okay. We are in Acts 21, and the heading in the message is Tyre and Caesarea. And this is coming right off Paul. He's tailing toward the end of his third missionary journey. He's on his way back to Jerusalem, which actually is going to be we're going to spend a lot of time talking about that today, because that takes up a lot of this chapter. Is his should he go to Jerusalem or shouldn't he? It's kind of
Okay.
interesting how this works out.
Hmm.
But that's where Paul's headed. Paul wants to get back to Jerusalem. That'll be the end of his third and final missionary journey. So,
That's right, and he had a tearful goodbye.
yeah, he just met with the leaders at, I think it was in Miletus, but he had the Ephesus. He had spent like 3 years in Ephesus. It's
Mhm.
thought that he probably wrote some of his epistles there. We're gonna get into Galatians a little bit today, and Romans, and it's possible that he wrote those while he was in Ephesus. We don't know exactly when things were written, um, but we have pretty good ideas, you know what I mean? But we can't, like, nail it down within a 10 or a 15-year span, um so here we go. And so, with the tearful goodbyes behind us, we were on our way. Paul and his companions is what it's talking about.
Mhm.
We made a straight run to Kaz. The next day reached Rhodes, and then Patara. They're on a ship. So this was before planes and trains and automobiles. You had horses, ships, and legs. That's what we
Right.
had.
Dusty sandals. That's a
Camels maybe in the right
Oh,
spot.
true.
There we found a ship going direct to Phoenicia, got on board and set sail. Cyprus came into view on our left, but was soon out of sight as we kept on course for Syria, and eventually docked in the port of Tyre. While the cargo was being unloaded, we looked up the local disciples and stayed with them 7 days. Their message to Paul from insight given by the Spirit was, don't go to Jerusalem. When our time was up, they escorted us out of the city to the docks. Everyone came along, men, women, children. They made a farewell party of the occasion. We all kneeled together on the beach and prayed. Then, after another round of saying goodbye, we climbed on board the ship while they drifted back to their homes. A short run from Tyre to Ptolemais completed the voyage. We greeted our Christian friends there and stayed with them a day. In the morning, we went on to Caesarea and stayed with Philip, the evangelist, one of the seven. Philip had 4 virgin daughters who prophesied. After several days of visiting, a prophet from Judea or a prophet from Judea by the name of Agabus came down to see us. He went right up to Paul, took Paul's belt, and in a dramatic gesture, tied himself up hands and feet. He said, "This is what the Holy Spirit says. The Jews in Jerusalem are going to tie up the man who owns this belt, just like this, and hand him over to godless unbelievers."
Hmm.
When we heard that, we and everyone there that day begged Paul not to be stubborn and persist in going to Jerusalem. But Paul wouldn't budge. Why all this hysteria? Why do you insist on making a scene and making it even harder for me? You're looking at this backward. The issue in Jerusalem is not what they do to me, whether they arrest or murder, but what the Master Jesus does through my obedience. Can't you see that? We saw we weren't making even a dent in his resolve and gave up. It's in God's hands now, we said. Master, you handle it. Wasn't long before we had our luggage together and were on our way to Jerusalem. Some of the disciples from Caesarea went with us and took us to the home of Mnason, who received us warmly as his guest. A native of Cyprus, he had been among the earliest disciples. So,
Good job.
yeah. So Paul is really wanting to go to Jerusalem, and he appears to think that the Holy Spirit wants him to go to Jerusalem, and yet the Holy Spirit seems to be sending some mixed messages through some other people.
Right. I was going to say now here in this, the Spirit is telling him, don't go.
That's what it says.
Yeah. So have we heard that the Spirit told him to go or just
Well,
earlier?
earlier Paul, I think, said, oh, where was it? He was, I think it was in the earlier chapter where he was intent to get to Jerusalem because he wanted to get there in time for a feast.
Oh, right.
Remember?
I mean, that was his plan, but then I thought he started getting, the
He was in a
message not
hurry.
to go.
Paul had decided to bypass Ephesus so that he wouldn't be held up in Asia province. He was in a hurry to get to Jerusalem in time for the feast of Pentecost, if at all possible.
Mm.
So yeah, it does seem like, well, there's a couple different ways people look at it. Some commentators will say that um that the people who were prophesying over Paul were getting correct, they were hearing the Spirit correctly, and that Paul was going to go to Jerusalem and he was going to be bound, and he was going to, and that's what ends up happening. And
Mhm.
and Paul ends up spending the rest of his life, probably 3 or 4 years imprisoned on his way to Rome and in Rome for a while,
Mhm.
where he's eventually killed by, I think Nero is the um historically they think that it was Nero that had Paul killed, and historically I think they think he was beheaded.
So you think like for example, the Spirit is not telling him not to go. The Spirit's just saying, "Hey, listen. This is what's going to happen in Jerusalem." And so maybe people like
Well,
the
that's what commentators
prophesying.
think. They that they're overlaying this all with their own emotion, which is don't go, even though
Mhm.
God's just saying this is what's gonna happen.
Right.
But it doesn't
Whereas like
exist.
Paul has accepted it, but no one else has.
Yeah, but it doesn't exactly say that, because it says, their message to Paul from insight given by the Spirit was, "Don't go to Jerusalem."
Yeah.
So it's this is one of those where if you're not comfortable with some disparity or a little bit of what appears to be disagreement in the Bible,
Mhm.
or even in God and in God's word to
Mhm.
us, you have a real hard time. This is what
This
this
is one
is
of those
this
spots.
we talked last week about what Pastor Sam did with that chapter on David and how we know that God couldn't send an evil spirit. And so you end up with the same kind of thing. You start to search for ways around it. And I'm
Mhm.
not
Sure.
entirely sure that that's the way to handle it. I think that
Okay.
maybe things are a little mixed sometimes with God. In other words, or at least we have to remember we're the ones receiving it, right?
Right.
So I'm not sure that our receivers are always perfectly attuned, and I'm not sure that
I think
that's
that's
any.
more yeah.
I'm not sure that Paul's receiver was always perfectly tuned. Like we talked
Mhm.
about this again last week. Is there times where even leaders, where even the apostle Paul could have been wrong? Yeah, I gotta believe that there is,
Sure. I
right?
think so. I think that's more likely than God, like, sending mixed messages.
Well, when I
It's
say
more
that,
likely that we would receive interpret messages in a mixed fashion than God's intentions being
well,
to
sometimes
confuse or
God
contradict
changes his
himself.
mind. Do you think?
Um, I'm gonna say maybe if you're talking about like a wide range of well, yeah, I mean, he changed his mind about how many people to save. Remember, was it Moses who was like, if there's one
Abraham, yeah.
Abraham, okay. Ab
God was gonna destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, and Abraham
yeah.
said, "Would
If
for
there's
the sake of even 5, will you save the
1
city?"
yeah, right,
And he gets all the way down to 5 or 10, and God says, "I'll save him for
yeah.
10 or 5."
So,
And
can
there
God change
wasn't that many.
right. So, can God change his mind? Yes, but I don't think God changes I'm just guessing. I'm saying I don't believe that God would change his mind and say, in one moment, "Paul, don't go to Jerusalem," and then be like, "Yeah, you should go, but it's gonna be awful." Like, I just
Yeah,
that doesn't sound like God to me, so I would think that that would be more, misinterpretation on the receiver's end.
could be.
What do you think?
I don't know. You know what I think is that perhaps I wrote this down in my margins. I said, "Perhaps we never know for sure when we're dealing with God." Stephen Furtick has this message. He's from Elevation Church. Sunday show extraordinaire.
Is Elevation near you, or is it, like, on
No, it's in
TV?
Charlotte. Yeah, it's a
Okay,
big
okay,
he's the one who has Elevation Nights, and they go around, and
okay.
he's real I listen, he ministers to me. He's the most Sunday show thing out there. Do with that what you want.
And what's his name?
Stephen Furtick.
Okay.
So, anyway, he has a message that has greatly ministered to me. It's probably 4 or 5 years old now, called "It's a 50-50 Faith." And the
Mhm,
passage he uses is, in First Samuel, Saul is king, David's anointed king, right? Well, Saul's son is Jonathan, and David and Jonathan become really close.
okay.
And then eventually Saul starts hunting David, and it becomes a problem. But but David and Jonathan are super close. Well, anyway, he talks about Jonathan. He's out at war. They're sitting around. Saul's over here. The army isn't doing much. They're fighting the Philistines, but there's this kind of garrison up on the hill. And Jonathan calls his armor bearer over, and he's like, "Let's climb up that hill. Maybe God will give us the victory." And so what Stephen Furtick does in this message is he hones in on that maybe idea, which is we don't always know when we're stepping out into faith that this is right, that this is going to work. But maybe that's a feature, not a bug. Maybe God wants us to step out, and sometimes we get it wrong, and sometimes we get it right.
Mhm,
But it's the stepping out that God's most concerned about. He can deal with everything else if we'll just go, if we'll just take a step, even if it maybe is a misstep. God's grace and mercy will kind of buffer that for us.
yeah.
It's really the stepping out in faith that God's after, rather than knowing for sure. Because if we did know for sure, there wouldn't be any faith.
Got it.
Make sense?
Yes.
So I think it's possible
Mhm.
that Paul was convinced he needed to go to Jerusalem, and that maybe the Holy Spirit was trying to back him off a little bit, but who's to say and who knows? I mean, really, how can we? I mean, you're talking about the Apostle Paul who went up to the third and fourth heaven, and all these things, and
Yeah.
raising people like clearly he's in tune with God, but at the same time, you wonder, well, is it possible that he missed some warnings that maybe he'd have been around longer, maybe he wouldn't have been imprisoned? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Maybe Paul, there can be something in people, and Paul was when remember, he persecuted the church so heavily before he was converted,
Right.
and then at his conversion, remember, God says to Ananias, the guy who's laying hands on Paul and the scales fall from his eyes, and
Yeah.
he's scared when God tells him that he's gonna deal with this awful Saul person, right?
Oh,
And
yes.
and God says, "I'm gonna show him how much he has to suffer for my sake." Well, I think that could get into your head, and so if Paul hears God tell him, "If you go to Jerusalem, you're gonna be in prison, you're gonna be all this," and Paul might take that as, "That's part of my that's part of my mission. That's part of why God saved me. It's how he's using me, and it's just part of it."
Mhm.
Maybe wasn't always the case, and maybe he missed. I think it's at least possible. I don't
Mhm.
know. You know what I mean?
And we've talked about Paul this way a couple of times. Maybe, just like we are today, sometimes when you get in your head something about your own story, your own identity, it's really hard to shake that. And I think that
Yeah,
Paul's like hard on himself because of his past.
right.
So I could see him carrying that
It can direct you
all
a
the
little bit
way.
even when you're not
Mhm.
actively, you know what I mean?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
No, I don't know. I think that's interesting. Reason I wonder about it is because of what happens in Jerusalem afterwards. So,
Okay. Are we
you wanna
ready to
read the
get to this?
Jerusalem part?
Okay.
Yeah, let's keep going.
All right. You ready?
Yes.
All right. So this is chapter 21, starting at 17.
Yes.
In Jerusalem, our friends, glad to see us, received us with open arms. The first thing next morning, we took Paul to see James. All the church leaders were there. After a time of greeting and small talk, Paul told the story, detail by detail, of what God had done among the non Jewish people through his ministry. They listened with delight and gave God the glory. They had a story to tell too. And just look at what's been happening here. Thousands upon thousands of God fearing Jews have become believers in Jesus. But there's also a problem because they are more zealous than ever in observing the laws of Moses. They've been told that if you advise believing Jews who live surrounded by unbelieving outsiders to go light on Moses, telling them that they don't need to circumcise their children or keep up the old traditions, this is sitting this isn't sitting at all well with them. I'm not sure I made sense of that. We're going to talk about that.
Where was it?
Well, I just don't know. Maybe I didn't read it smoothly, but we'll get to it. We'll
Okay.
get to it. Okay.
We'll get to it, Carrie.
We're worried. Sorry about that. We're worried about what will happen when they discover you're in town. There's bound to be trouble. So here's what we want you to do. There are 4 men from our company who have taken a vow involving ritual purification, but have no money to pay the expenses. Join these men in their vows and pay their expenses. Then it will become obvious to everyone that there is nothing to the rumors going around about you, and that you are in fact scrupulous in your reverence for the laws of Moses. In asking you to do this, we're not going back on our agreement regarding non Jews who have become believers. We continue to hold fast to what we wrote in that letter, namely, to be careful not to get involved in activities connected with idols, to avoid serving food offensive to Jewish Christians, to guard the morality of sex and marriage. So Paul did it, took the men, joined them in their vows, and paid their way. The next day he went to the temple to make it official and stay there until the proper sacrifices had been offered and completed for each of them.
So, we're about to find out in the next, section that things go badly, like
Yeah,
they
it
do
doesn't
so
go so
often for
well.
Paul.
He tried. You should have listened. Don't go
But
to Jerusalem.
I wondered when I saw that, I thought,
Mhm.
"Man, I don't that there's something about kowtowing Paul and James kowtowing to these Jewish believers that bugged me." You know
Okay.
what I mean?
Okay.
They just let's go to, I'm gonna go to Galatians 2. Galatians is a letter written by Paul to the believers to the church in Galatia,
Mhm.
in Asia Minor, where, he spent a bunch of time and he spent a bunch of time in Ephesus, and he was in Galatia for a while.
Okay.
Well, in, uh, in chapter 2 of Galatians, uh, verse 11, he Paul he's gonna detail a confrontation that he had with Peter. And I think this kinda dovetails nicely with what we talked about last week too.
Okay.
Later, when Peter came to Antioch, I had a face-to-face confrontation with him because he was clearly out of line. So here you have Paul, the apostle of the Gentiles, coming after Peter, the first pope,
Okay.
according to the Catholics, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, there's a face to this is a confrontation, right? This is what we talked about, iron sharpening iron. Paul's
Right.
convinced Peter's wrong, and then he tells us why.
Okay.
Earlier, before certain persons, or he said, here's the situation. Earlier, before certain persons had come from James, Peter regularly ate with the non-Jews. But when that conservative group came from Jerusalem, he cautiously pulled back and put as much distance as he could manage between himself and his non-Jewish friends. That's how fearful he was of the conservative Jewish clique that's been pushing the old system of circumcision.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, the rest of the Jews in the Antioch church joined in that hypocrisy, so that even Barnabas was swept along in the charade. So you can see Paul's like, all these people are getting swept up in this going back to Judaism, basically.
Mhm.
And and even Barnabas is, but a bunch of these people, James, Peter, Barnabas, like solid pillars of the church are swept up with going back to the law, going back to observing everything that goes with being a Jew.
Right. It's all the stuff they're familiar with and, like, the old ways.
And Paul, the Jew of Jews, who learned at the feet of Gamaliel, and
Oh,
and
right.
and like if you line him up from like a resume standpoint, like Paul's a Pharisee of the Pharisees. Like he knows more about all of this than any of them combined, and
Mhm.
he's the one fighting against it. Mind you,
Okay.
Galatians was written before, I think, probably was written before the events that we're reading about today. So this is before that Paul wrote this. Before what we're reading about right now that happened with Paul going back to Jerusalem,
Mhm.
this happened with Peter in Antioch. So then it
Is it
says,
really? I'm sorry, I'm just curious. It's not
yeah,
okay.
probably.
Gotcha. Okay.
But when I saw that they were not maintaining a steady, straight course according to the message, see, Paul even says you should only use the message. I spoke up to Peter in front of them all. If you, a Jew, live like a non Jew when you're not being observed by the watchdogs from Jerusalem, what right do you have to require non Jews to conform to Jewish customs just to make a favorable impression on your old Jewish buddies, your old Jerusalem buddies? We Jews know that we have no advantage of birth over non Jewish sinners. We know very well that we are not set right with God by rule keeping, but only through personal faith in Jesus Christ. How do we know? We tried it. That's what he says. We did it. So, convinced that no human being can please God by self improvement, we believed in Jesus the Messiah so that we might be set right before God by trusting in the Messiah, not by trying to be good. And he goes down a little further and he says, if I was trying to be good, I would be rebuilding the same old barn that I tore down, talking about the law and about Jerusalem and about Judaism,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
Uh, so he says, I tried keeping the rules and working my head off to please God, and it didn't work. So I quit being a lawman so that I could be God's man. Christ's
Mm.
life showed me how and enabled me to do it. And later again in 21, he says, is it not clear to you that to go back to that old rule keeping, pure pleasing religion would be an abandonment of everything personal and free in my relationship with God? If a living relationship with God could come by rule keeping, then Christ died unnecessarily. So you've got Paul just full force coming at this idea that we still need to keep the law, that Christianity is just an extension of Judaism, right?
Paul's saying that?
Paul is saying that. He's writing that to the he's telling about this thing that happened with Peter in
Mhm.
Antioch
Okay.
and how Peter was cool. He's drinking beer and he's smoking and he's doing whatever with the Galatians, with the
Okay.
Gentiles until everybody from Jerusalem comes. Then he buttons up and he's like, I don't do any of that. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't participate in any of that. Suddenly he's not cursing anymore.
That's
But
funny.
that kind of a thing, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And Paul is just fierce about personal freedom and about freedom from the law. That Christ saved us from the law, not so we could go back to it.
Okay.
Okay, all
Okay,
that
wait, so he's
happens.
not criticizing him for not going to the law. He's saying that when people from Jerusalem came, he then
Peter went
went
right
back.
back and became a
Okay,
Jew again.
okay, yeah,
Not that he wasn't, but you know what I mean. He started following all the Jews stuff
okay,
because the Jews from Jerusalem were here, and we got to keep up appearances.
okay.
That's
Yeah,
kind of where he's coming
that's
from.
probably what it was.
And same thing happened with
Sometimes
Barnabas. Same thing it looked like happened with James.
sometimes that's kind of how, church rules feel.
Hmm.
It feels like it's more about appearances than actual sometimes, I guess that's
Well, and
what
it's nice to know that they were struggling with that and dealing with that all the way back at the beginning.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And,
Mhm,
and what I wonder is if there isn't this pull to Jerusalem,
mhm.
even in Paul. This is what I think. This was earlier, but now Paul's got it in his head to go back to Jerusalem. He really wants to be there for the feast of Pentecost. You
Mhm.
know, this is the way. This was everything Paul knew. It was how he grew up. That nostalgia of pulling him back, of being like, man, I still miss some of that. I still miss the temple. You know what I mean? Some of those
Yeah.
things. So he goes back. James lays this out on him, and Paul says, "Okay, I'll it's in order to keep the peace. It's in order to keep the peace with these people, with these Jews who think that keeping the law is that important. And I'm not
Mhm.
sure that that wasn't a mistake on Paul's part. And then we see what we're going to see what goes on after that. But it made me wonder: is there anything that we have a tendency to do that with, where we tend to be like, I know this isn't it, but sometimes we feel pulled back to it. We feel pulled back to when we had all those boxes neatly tucked together and we went back to God when we knew what God meant, what God was, right? There
Right.
wasn't
Yeah.
it was all lined up, signed up, dotted I's, you know what I mean? I's dotted
Mhm.
T's crossed the whole thing. And I wonder
Yeah.
if Paul got caught up in that a little bit in this. It just I haven't heard it preached that way. So I'm a little bit out on an island here, like Pastor Sam last week. But so I don't know for sure, but it seems to me like maybe Paul was making some compromises that Paul 3 years ago might not have. You know what I mean?
Right.
And we're not
Regarding
talking
the
about
circumcision?
he didn't go out and have an affair. It's not like the end of the world kinda sin kinda stuff.
Right.
Just going back and giving a little bit more room to the law, a little bit more, you know, okay, if the Jews want this, we'll do this. Because I mean, Paul
Mhm.
is a Jew, you know what I mean? And it's important to him what James the church still has, in spite of all these missionary journeys, in spite of how well respected Paul is,
Mhm.
the early church still has this tie to Jerusalem. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Started there, and Jesus ministered there. Jesus was killed there, rose from the dead there. Like it's got this strong pull to the temple, to Jerusalem, to everything that was. It
Mhm.
makes me wonder, quite honestly, this is probably about AD 57. 13 years later, the Romans are gonna tear down Jerusalem and that temple like stone from stone, so that when Jesus says not one stone will be left on another, that's what he's talking about. In fact, the siege that the Romans put Jerusalem in the through, it led to cannibal it was horrific. The scenes that went on in Jerusalem were horrific, and then pulling down the temple and the entire thing. I think Titus sacrificed a pig on the altar in the temple,
Wow.
and that's like the abomination of desolation that Daniel probably was talking about. So this idea of the temple in Jerusalem being utterly razed,
Mhm.
that didn't only change Judaism, it did change that. It because
Mhm.
they became less land and temple oriented, and they kind of have gone to what modern Judaism is, which is rabbi teaching and things like that.
Mhm.
Um, but I think it also shifted Christianity. I think God wiped out that thing that was tying them to this institution that he had used for a while. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And I wonder if that's not what we're seeing. We're still seeing them work out some of the bugs of that. You know what I mean?
Right. I mean, it's gonna be if anything changes, it takes a while, and it takes kind of double like, circling back and saying reevaluating and, um so is he so what are the people in Jerusalem telling him that he said they're worried that some of these new believers
Mhm. These
are
Jews are
the
becoming
Jewish
believers in Jesus.
right.
But
And
but
the
it's making them even
non
more zealous to be, like, way better Jews, like, to hold to the law and do this. Do you know what I mean?
yeah. Yeah, they're like they're clinging to that legalistic
Yeah,
path because yeah, because if you're zealous about a religion, that's like
right.
how people are. So who is it who's telling them is this when Paul had told them that they didn't need to circumcise their children?
Yeah, Paul did
Okay.
that too.
And these people are saying, there
Now
are
he
some
was
people
telling Gentiles that.
uncomfortable. Gentiles, right.
Right.
And he's saying, though, that some people are uncomfortable with that.
Yeah. And so James is saying, listen, you've got a reputation. So Paul hardly spent any time. One of the things in Galatians, and this is in Galatians 1. I didn't
Mhm.
read this, but it talks about how little time Paul spent. Galatians 1:16 says, this is Paul talking, immediately after my calling, without consulting anyone around me and without going up to Jerusalem to confer with those who were apostles long before I was, I got away to Arabia, which was the desert, Saudi Arabia.
Okay.
Um, Later I returned to Damascus, but it was 3 years before I went up to Jerusalem to compare stories with Peter. I was only there 15 days, but what days they were! Except for our master's brother James, I saw no other apostles. Then I began my ministry in the regions of Syria and Cilicia. After all that time and activity, I was still unknown by face among the Christian churches in Judea. There was only this report: that man who once persecuted us is now preaching the very message he used to try to destroy.
Mm.
Their response was to recognize and worship God because of me. So this is earlier. But the point is that Paul isn't very well known in Jerusalem because
Mhm.
once he was converted, he didn't spend much time there. He's out doing missionary journeys. So these Jewish believers are hearing about Paul,
Mhm.
but they don't really trust Paul. Because what they're hearing about him is that he's knocking down the old ways, and you know what? It's possible that his letter to Galatians or maybe Romans, they're filtering around and copies of these things are moving around.
Mhm.
And it's possible they got a hold of that and they didn't like what he's saying about the law and about Moses and about all of this because Jesus saved us to be better Jews is what they thought. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Paul, it seems like, might have made a mistake in this, a misstep, I'll say,
Mhm.
in and maybe giving him a little bit more ground than what he should have. You know
Okay.
what I mean? It made me wonder it when I'm reading it. I just thought, let's go on and finish the chapter quick. You wanna read it or you want me to?
It's up to you.
Go ahead. You wanna read it? You wanna finish this out? It's not too
Sure.
much left.
Sure. Paul under arrest?
Yep.
All right. When the 7 days of their purification were nearly up, some Jews from around Ephesus spotted him in the temple. At once, they turned the place upside down. They grabbed Paul and started yelling at the top of their lungs, "Help! You Israelites, help! This is the man who's going all over the world telling lies against us and our religion and this place. He's even brought Greeks in here and defiled this holy place." What had happened was that they had seen Paul and Trophimus, the Ephesian Greek, walking together in the city and had just assumed that he had also taken him to the temple and shown him around. Soon the whole city was in an uproar, people running from everywhere to the temple to get in on the action. They grabbed Paul, dragged him outside, and locked the temple gates so he couldn't get back in and gain sanctuary. As they were trying to kill him, word came to the captain of the guard. "A riot! The whole city's boiling over." He acted swiftly. His soldiers and centurions ran to the scene at once. As soon as the mob saw the captain and his soldiers, they quit beating Paul. The captain came up and put Paul under arrest. He first ordered him handcuffed and then asked who he was and what he had done. All he got from the crowds were shouts, one yelling this, another that. It was impossible to tell one word from another in the mob hysteria, so the captain ordered Paul taken to the military barracks. But when they got to the temple steps, the mob became so violent that the soldiers had to carry Paul. As they carried him away, the crowd followed, shouting, "Kill him! Kill him!" When they got to the barracks and were about to go in, Paul said to the captain, "Can I say something to you?" He answered, "Oh, I didn't know you spoke Greek. I thought you were the Egyptian who not so long ago started a riot here and then hid out in the desert with his 4,000 thugs." Paul said, "No, I'm a Jew born in Tarsus, and I'm a citizen still of that influential city. I have a simple request. Let me speak to the crowd." Then you want me to read the end here?
Yeah, read that last little verse.
Standing on the barrack steps, Paul turned and held his arms up. A hush fell over the crowd as Paul began to speak. He spoke in Hebrew.
So we'll see what he had to say next week.
Yeah.
Dun, dun, dun,
It's like a
dun.
Fears or Teasers cliffhanger. Wow.
But you can see how things didn't go well.
Yeah.
And you get the feeling that if Paul hadn't been there messing with these vows and paying these fees and being at the temple for 7 days, that because you know who finds him is this is around the time of a feast, right? And
Mhm.
so
Right.
Jews have come from Ephesus. You remember all the problems that Paul had with Jews in Ephesus. Remember they started a riot. He wanted to go in, and his friends were like, "No," and they sneak him out of the city.
They snuck him out. Yep.
He gets down to Thessalonica, which is 50 miles away. Takes a few weeks, but eventually those same Jews find him there. Like they had it out for Paul, right? And now they see him in Jerusalem, and the same thing. They start saying, "Oh, he's bringing Gentiles in." Now, Gentiles could come into the court of the Gentiles, but they couldn't go beyond that into the temple grounds.
Yeah.
And so all of this is going on, and I don't know, it just makes you wonder. Now listen, God's going to use it all regardless, right?
Mhm. Y
Maybe this was God's maybe this was God's design and God's will right from the beginning. Maybe he's making the best of something where Paul went backward a little or made it, nostalgia, whatever it was, pulled him back and he thought, I don't want to make a big stink with all these, Jerusalem Christians.
Mhm.
I don't want to be a stumbling block for them. I don't want to be this. I don't want to put out some podcast where they think I'm attacking them. But so Paul kind of gives in and he kind of he makes an effort to keep the peace, and in making the effort to keep the peace, an absolute riot erupts. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like so I just wonder as I look at this, I think, I don't know. I don't know where
You
because you've
know,
got the earlier warnings not to go, and it's just a little mixed up, you know?
what's funny to me is Ephesians is this beautiful book. It's really short, but it's like the couple of letters to the
Yeah,
Ephesians. They're beautiful. They're all it's just very like feel good, love, peace, whatever. And I'm like, I just sort of assumed that the people from Ephesus were,
real chill.
yeah, they're really not. Maybe that's why he was writing all of that stuff. Like, hey, y'all just
Well, the church in Ephesus was, which is who he wrote to, but the Jews in Ephesus were not big fans.
yeah.
And then beyond that, the Jews kind of got together with the silversmiths, remember, because they felt like Paul was having a bad impact on their sales of idols and gods.
Oh, that's right.
And so they run him out of town. And
Mhm.
I suppose that could be a case of why Paul didn't wanna go back, and he had him come meet him 2 days journey before he said his goodbyes to the Ephesian elders.
Mhm.
But I just thought, do we see that in our life? Do we see where there's some things maybe that by and large we've left behind, and they don't even necessarily have to be sin, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
They could be things that in their time and in their place were good and God used them. But
Mhm.
as we came to see later on, God was moving us away from those, and yet, because we know him so well, we can have a pull to kinda, I just kinda go back, and, with Paul, it could have been the temple and all those things that he had grown up with that were so important to him. And it wouldn't have been just Paul that would have been struggling with this. And maybe that's why it's so cataclysmic and almost apocalyptic the way that God goes about destroying Jerusalem and the temple. Like C.S. Lewis makes this comment, you don't bring a battery like an artillery to destroy a molehill. You bring it to destroy a mountain. Like it depends on what you're dealing with, right?
Mhm.
And so this was a massive an institution that God had used. And so its fall and its destruction is almost massive. And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because God's trying to make a point, is what I wonder. That this is over. This sacrificial stuff, all of this is over. And at that point, the Jews are pretty much scattered from Jerusalem. You've heard it probably called the diaspora.
I have heard that.
which is the Jews are kind of scattered around. You know, they're not in Israel. I understand that now they've gone back, but
Yeah.
even now it's a minority that's gone back. You still have the diaspora out there kind of
Really?
all
Okay.
over. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I didn't know what that meant.
So
Hmm.
anyway, what do you think, Gary?
So, well, what do you think? Do you feel like when you say, are there things that we do that we do? I mean, are we talking about like, I don't know, like rules that we used to think were important that now we don't?
Could be.
Or like, you kind of grow, I don't want to say grow out of church rules, but I'll say this. I don't want to get in the weeds on specifics, but the way I feel about, you called me a cradle Catholic at the front end of this. Um,
Well, you call yourself that.
sure, yeah. I mean, you called me out, but I feel like I'm in a place now where I'm much more. My eyes are open to what are the rules that came from God and what are the rules that came from people
Yeah,
forming traditions in a church. And there's some stuff that I like, but if there are things that I, disagree with, I ask myself, is that a man thing or a God thing?
right.
And I don't know,
Well,
I guess, yeah.
I kind of think that, like with Lauren, kind of uh exploring the mysteries of the Church of Rome,
Mhm.
my daughter.
Yeah.
That can be a big thing for people. Like
Mhm.
you can have um evangelicals or whatever, Protestants who they've grown up their whole life like that, their whole family was like that. All of a sudden one of their kids starts to explore Catholicism and they're like, "Wait a minute." You know what I mean? It can be a big thing. I suppose it could
Right.
probably go the other way too.
Right.
And so maybe the question is, we don't know what God is gonna use for that time, but I think that the answer is it's not gonna be a list of rules and regulations that we have to, it if what's inside you promotes you to worry about what other people are thinking and how they might think about you and
Mhm.
this, that, and the other, well, maybe you're not in the best spot. Even if you're the Apostle Paul, I wonder.
Mhm.
I don't know. I really don't know, and I'm not saying that, to try to get off the hook. It's just that this chapter presents some quandaries and some questions, and I'm not entirely sure it gives us great answers. I don't. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I know that we like our messages and things, like, all tidily wrapped up,
Mhm.
but I'm not sure that we always get that in the Bible. You know,
Mhm.
there's stories and there's things that were left kinda. I sent you that story about, my sister had it was on my brother-in-law's side, and they had somebody pass away, and the
Mhm.
story of this, it was a younger guy, like, in his early 40s, is horrific. It's a horrific story what happened to this guy. Other healthy, and then 6 months ago, starts to get a ringing in his head. This
Mhm.
ringing basically drives him insane,
Yeah.
and you've got, the entire medical complex, nobody had any answers for anything,
Mhm.
and this guy ends up trying to kill himself. He ends up dying of hypothermia. I mean, it's just it's a horrific story.
Mhm.
And, like, when I heard that story and I was talking to him today at church and I said, "You know, those are the kinds of stories you hear, and, like, it can set you back and you just think, 'Man, I didn't think God was like that.'" You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it can really put you off balance a little bit sometimes because
Mhm.
we're supposed to be a little bit more sure, like, we're supposed to feel things are supposed to be a little more readily available, like, we come to Christ,
Mhm.
and He's the light, and man, but then sometimes you get into things, and it's just everything's all mixed up, and I feel like Paul in this chapter was kinda dealing with that a little bit. He's got his close friends, and he's even got prophets that are coming in, and they're telling him, "Don't go," but he feels so strongly he should go, and then he gets there, and James like, "You need to do this." Then he tries to do that, and then everything goes to hell, and it's just it's
Right.
like, man, God gets down in the mess, you know? Like, this is just a
Mhm.
messy chapter. like our lives are messy.
Right. I mean, and you said earlier, you brought up stepping out in faith, and I mean, I think that's what we have to do when it's unclear.
Yeah.
Because we're not given, yeah, I mean,
Do the best we can, maybe.
definitely. Today in church we were talking about the Beatitudes.
Mm,
They were in the reading today. And one of my sons, Alexander, was saying, kept talking about perfection, like we're supposed to strive for perfection. Well, that word, he gets hung up on that word,
yeah.
and it becomes a discouraging journey for him, and I said, "You need to just forget that word." I said, "God just appreciates the striving."
He does.
Like, just the effort and the striving. So I feel like it's similar in this. When we don't understand, when we're unclear, I think that just handing over those uncertainties to God and saying, "I don't understand this. I'm not gonna lose faith over what I don't understand. I'm just gonna give it to you and have
Yeah.
faith that you're going to make it clear for me
Yeah.
someday." We don't know when.
No, I think you're right. I think that's God, he gets right down into the I sometimes call it a scrum, right down into the
Oh, yeah,
scrum with
yeah,
us,
yeah.
you know what I
I
mean?
love that. Yeah.
He's, like, right in it, and
Mhm.
he doesn't always make it less messy.
Mhm.
Sometimes he works within the mess, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And it's hard for us to say, at least I know this, I look back sometimes and I think, "Ah, did I take that was that the right call or the wrong call?" And the answer is God's using it all, maybe.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Well, and I like how you describe him in the scrum, but you've gotta invite him in. Like, you've
Yeah.
gotta be like, "Get in here." He's not gonna, you know,
But we always
invite him
expect
into
him
the
to
puddle.
fix everything, and it's not that God doesn't fix everything, but he doesn't fix it in the way that we define fix. It often doesn't look or feel to us like he's fixing things,
Mhm.
you know? It often seems like things are going from bad to worse when we have God like, we invite God in,
Yeah.
and, like, you were supposed to fix this, and you made it worse. Like, and I got some issues with that, you know what I mean? Like, I
Mhm.
think God can take that kinda thing from us. I think he wants it. He wants some, like, authenticity, like, just
Mhm.
ask the questions, even if you don't get the answers, God can take whatever we can throw at him. What do you think?
I think that's true. I think, yeah, you've gotta invite him in, and it's okay to say, "Hey, like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
I don't like this is even worse. I don't like this at all." And, yeah, because if we have that kind of relationship with him, then, you know, I don't know, it feels more authentic. It feels more personal.
Well, see, there can just be things that are really hard, like,
Mhm.
um, people dying. We talked in the last episode,
Yeah.
my mom died, my aunt died, and there's cancer on both things. Floyd died, your stepdad, my uncle,
Oh, yeah, they're all siblings who he's talking about for people who don't know.
and that it like your mom was talking about a text, and I felt this way too. Like I knew Floyd. This thing had happened with Floyd. He'd gone in for heart surgery, and he'd come out, and everything was okay. And then
Yeah,
and like a rare complication
and
hits,
then it just wasn't.
and he just kind of went downhill. And I was certain that God was going to heal him. That God was going to come through. That it was going to be this, and then things only go downhill, and it really takes a toll. You know,
Right,
and
right.
to try to learn to trust him in the mess, which is the only it's our whole life. It's the only way we can trust him is in the mess.
Right. But no, it's a good example because our faith in that moment, our faith that suredness is that he's gonna be okay. Everything's gonna be alright.
Yeah.
And you can't, I mean, you can be optimistic. You can definitely say, "God, I know you're gonna fix this and make everybody well again," but yeah, you have to stick with him. You have to know that he's with you even when it's not going your way.
There's something encouraging to me that even Paul
Mhm.
wasn't always coming at life and at Christianity from a place of certainty. There was still a lot of uncertainty.
Mhm.
He was still in this messy world that we are. And he still may have made some missteps,
Mhm.
and God was working still through all of it. Do you know what I mean? Because he was still
Yeah.
stepping out. He's still stepping out in faith. Maybe it was a misstep when he had that big argument with Barnabas about John Mark. I don't know. But God's still working through it. All of a sudden, they're multiplying. You got 2 missionary journeys instead of 1. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I think that that's where the faith comes in. The faith comes from getting to know God even in the mess that is our lives, maybe,
Mhm.
because it never ever goes like it should, like we
Right.
think it should, like
Like
we've
we
got it
think it should, right.
figured out, you know? And
Yeah. I
so it's
think if
trusting
things
anyway.
going according to plan, it's pretty rare. I mean, if
Yeah.
everyone's honest, it's pretty rare.
So that was kind of what I took out of this chapter. I just thought, man, that's what it's encouraging to me that even Paul was getting the Holy Spirit. He's getting it. He feels it so strong, but then people are saying this, and then his own friends are like, "You shouldn't do this," and then they're not making a dent. You know what I mean? Like the whole thing is just, it's a little different than than what we like to
Mhm.
think of the Bible and the patriarchs and the apostles as kind of
Yeah.
going through life with, you know?
Right. I mean, they had it really tough. The challenges were beyond what we face.
Oh yeah.
Um, so, right, just a comment here about him at the end. I like how he's like, no, I mean, he's getting hauled up. He's been cuffed, tied up. He's getting hauled. He's getting carried through a mob screaming for for his head, basically. And he's super calm and he's like, "Hey, can I ask you something? Can I can you let
Oh,
me talk
and
to you?"
then he's gonna use it. We're gonna see it next week. He uses it as an opportunity to preach the gospel.
I know, and it's like, I mean, that's coming, but I just love that even then,
Oh, yeah.
he just doesn't seem afraid.
He doesn't get down on him. He's like, "Oh my god, I should have never done this." You know what I mean? He just rolls
Yep.
with it and goes to the next thing and is like, "Okay, God, what's the next
Yeah.
opportunity?"
You know those people who, like, things go wrong, they're like, "Ugh, like, this always happens.
Yeah.
This just my luck." Like, Paul would never be the one to say that. He's
No,
really
he was always looking for the next opportunity.
yeah.
And that's encouraging, maybe. Maybe that's something part of what we're supposed to take out of this is don't get hung up in worrying that you made the wrong decision or that you made this misstep or you went the
Mm,
wrong direction on this one. Just keep stepping out. God will use it
that's a
and
great lesson to take
God will
from
kinda
this.
correct it as you go. You know what I
Coming
mean?
out with this, like,
There you go.
So I love that lesson because it's true.
Just
Yeah,
keep
I mean,
going.
you make decisions and then you're like, "Ah, that was stupid." Like
Don't waste a bunch of time second guessing yourself. Learn
Mhm,
from things and whatever,
mhm,
but then look for the next opportunity 'cause even if we make a misstep, God will probably provide us an opportunity in that, you know?
mhm, right.
And I think that maybe is the lesson, or at least a lesson to
Mhm.
take out of this passage. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think you're right, and I think he doesn't stand on the steps and tell the people like, the Spirit told me do not come to Jerusalem. I can't believe it."
He was right.
Now look
Also
at the pickle I'm in.
also, don't you look and think, "My what in the world? Jerusalem, like these Jews in Jerusalem are on a hair freaking trigger, man.
I
Look at
know, man.
Jesus comes to town, they're cheering him as king, and a week later they kill him, and now they
I
wanna
know, they're
kill Paul. They're just like,
I
"What
know,
is
0
going
to
on?"
60 on the execution,
I
like,
know.
mindset. I know, they're wild. Hair
They're just
trigger.
like, "Wah!" What? Why are you
We don't
so
like that
ready
guy
to
anymore.
riot? What is
Straight
going on?
I know, they're crazy.
So,
Yeah.
alright. Well, I think we did good today. What do you think?
Good job. We made it through a whole chapter.
Look at us go.
Were you trying to make it through because we took last week off?
No, I just thought
Able to
as I read the whole story, I felt like it all kinda went together.
Yeah, it does.
And then
Totally.
we can hit his kinda little preaching next week and
Cool.
take it from
Hopefully
there, and
people hung
so,
in there with us.
yeah, I hope that they did. Check out
Don't be
news.
discouraged.
Yeah. Don't take the steps of faith anyway, even if you're not certain. Or even if you are certain and it comes out and you're like, maybe I shouldn't have been so certain, I don't know."
That's true.
God really just wants us to I really think that, to step out. Like all that grace and mercy is at work, and he can correct all kinds of things. But what he has a really hard time with is people who just sit around and don't do anything. That's where you really get you read
Yep.
the letters of the churches in Revelation, and he's like, "Ah, I can't stand that you're neither hot or cold, man. Like, I'd rather have you,
Yeah.
I'd rather have you
Make a
lost in
difference,
sin where
huh?
I'm working with you here or on fire over here where you're taking some missteps and I can work with it. But when you just sit and do nothing, it
It's like,
drives him crazy."
eh, yeah.
He just doesn't have any place for any kind of complacency. He has infinite grace for missteps and failures along the way. He's gonna make us perfect. I believe that.
Mhm,
C.S. Lewis has this line. I don't have it in but it's something that it reminded me. I think it was you said it was Alexander, right? Or Patrick. I don't remember
mhm,
which one. Alexander.
mhm.
And he says, God will not accept in one sense, he'll only make us perfect and he won't accept anything less. On the other hand, he's happy with the smallest step in that direction, even if we fall, even if we fail, even if if we're just making the effort, because he's going to do it.
Mhm.
It's him at work in us and working to willing to do it and everything else. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I really think it's just going out and doing it. Like when you get that, you've had that feeling, and say he gives you a word for somebody, and you're like, well, I don't really want to say anything, but I guess I'll say something. It's just that doing it, you know?
Mhm.
And I think that's the important part is just stepping out and being willing to act seems to be the most important thing.
Yeah,
So,
and sometimes it's hard, so it's good to get this reinforcement that it's a good thing, you just gotta go for it.
it's not ever clean and easy.
Mhm.
It
Yeah, right.
wasn't
Yeah,
clean and easy for Jesus. He went to his own hometown and they tried to throw him off a cliff.
I know.
Like Jesus went through some stuff. So,
Right.
all right, guys, thanks for joining us today. We're right at an hour. Perfect. Perfect. Right down the sweet spot for Beers with Jesus. Look at us go. Hall of Fame level. Listen to last week's
Give
if you
us a
haven't.
7 out of 5 stars.
We just go for it.
Oh, that's funny.
Check out news if you haven't. Check out beers from last week. Our special episode was great. Worth a listen. And we'll be back next week. Check out toddsworld.net in between, and we're just going to keep rolling.
Sounds good. Thanks for listening.
All
Thanks for
right.
having me, Todd.
Thanks for joining me, Carrie. All right, guys. We'll catch you next week.